Namaskar and welcome to Sales Samvaad. Today I have with me Siddharth Sangwan. Hi Siddharth.
Hi, Saurabh.
Siddharth is Director and Head of Talent Strategy at Lightspeed India Partners Advisor. Lightspeed is fairly well known, so I don't have to introduce Lightspeed to most of our viewers. And I thought, Siddharth, the reason that I would invite you for this Samvad is a lot of people who are from sales and from a sales background or wanting to go into sales. A lot of founders, first time people who are running the show in sales for their startups, right? They watch the show. So, I kind of felt that it would be good to get a perspective because when they're building their sales team, right? Sales leadership, talent and that whole system, how do you build that up? When I say sales leadership, I mean not just very senior leadership right at the top, like national sales managers or that sorts. I'm also talking about mid-level leadership, right? So I thought, who better to ask than the person who does this day in and day out, right? Has been doing this for a long time, right? So welcome to the Samvad, and let me very quickly start off without wasting any more time into the questions.
Sure,
Okay?
Saurabh. Sure.
Perfect.
Glad to
So
be here.
सुपर. तो सिद्धार्थ, आप मेरे को सबसे पहले ये बताओ, you work with quite a lot of startups, right, in your portfolio companies, right? Um, when they are looking out for sales leadership talent, आपको बोलते क्या है? What exactly do they tell you? Are they able to define their requirements very clearly, or do you have to help them? What kind of conversations are these?
So, Sabi, as I know you, I won't
Yeah,
call you Saurabh as much, but
yeah.
Sabi, generally, I mean, it's a very relevant space that you've picked out because first time founders who have never, and if you're not coming yourself from a go to market sales oriented background, right? And
Which
potentially
is
most
usually the case, right?
which is usually the case. It's about to say they're mostly product or technology sort of folks or ops folks, and you don't have anybody in the founding team with that. This is go to market is generally seem like a mystical ball, right? And what you picked out is something that we always go back is try and define it because for a founder you are looking for everything, right? And for us, what we try and do with the founder, the first thing is help them really drill it down to their stage of the firm and basis the stage, what are the key aspects that you need to cover from now, let's say, to the next two stages, right? And not just the immediate next two quarters, and
Right.
help them define what does the company need to do. So if I go a level deeper, what I'm trying to say is hiring a sales leader or even defining the role of a sales leader will be different at a 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and a 10 to
Right.
end stage, right?
Right.
And founders come to us at all these stages at different times to say we are looking for people. But I think the most critical is the first, because once you've kind of tasted the ketchup early on, you've worked with a sales team and a sales leader or a VP sales, as we call it internally, you know what to expect in that space. So yeah, I mean, the short answer is no one is clear upfront what this role really will come in and do. And you have to sit with them, help them understand what does a sales leader do exactly, and then within that prioritize multiple things that would be relevant for them for that matter, and
Okay.
where would this kind of go to. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So, why I'm asking this question is, do you also like get a lot of cases where they have already burnt their fingers by hiring, first hand, and now they are coming to you for help? That okay, ये गलतियां हो गई हैं, हमसे नहीं हो रहा है, and we're not able to hire someone, and now, can you help us hire somebody?
So it does happen. I mean, at least from a light speed standpoint, I can very fairly confidently say we don't try and get to that stage where you've done that mistake and lost some time. Uh, but But yeah, what generally happens is there is this whole sense of how do you even identify or get to the stage of what does a good sales leader look like,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And the
Hmm.
mistakes happen when you don't know this in the market and
Right.
you go hire someone.
Hmm.
So one is more importantly, what are you hiring for? How are
Hmm.
you evaluating what are you hiring for thereafter? And
Right.
how do you manage the person once the person comes on board?
Got it. Got it. Got
And the
it. So I
mistakes
want
don't
to.
happen in either of
Hmm.
these.
Right. So can we take these three stages one by one? So the first one you mentioned was what are you looking for, right?
Hmm.
Right. So do you have some sort of a framework or what kind of sort of brief or debrief do you give the founders or they give you rather that this is what we are looking for? Do you have certain frameworks or some ways in identifying who to look for?
So sort of the brief from the founder more often than not is just a very single line. I
Hmm.
have to get to an X revenue stage,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Or if I'm
Right.
going to build, for example, the back end of um, let's say a health tech company, I need to have so many doctors on the platform using my product, right?
Hmm.
Or I
Hmm.
need to have so
Hmm.
many merchants using my app, right?
Hmm.
So how do we get on board all of this in
Hmm.
different aspects? So let me try and answer this with some focus of, let's say, enterprise sales to start with.
Right. Yes.
Okay. There is a clear framework that is talked
Hmm.
about, which is you hire sub 1 million, you hire an or the sales leader has to be the evangelist in the firm,
Right.
which
Hmm.
more often we will suggest to be the founder of the firm, because an
Hmm.
evangelist is someone who actually literally in any given point in time
Hmm.
is so passionate about the product that this person wants to sell it in every occasion, whether the person
Hmm.
is partnering with someone, he'll find an opportunity to sell there.
Hmm. Hmm.
This person is going through a formal meeting, he'll try and sell there, but this is a lone
Hmm.
wolf sort of a
Hmm.
scenario who understands the product upfront, right? Opening doors.
Right.
More often than not, and I'll just one level deeper on this one, we will suggest don't hire this person. This is the founder. Sub,
Okay.
which is
Okay.
like saying get your first 10 to 15 accounts.
Hmm.
Okay. But get your first 50 doctors, right,
Right.
on the platform. Then is the next stage, which is what we call the 1 to 10 stage, the 1 to
Hmm.
10 million that you
Hmm.
need to build. And that is a stage where we are talking about someone who will come in and start creating the playbook of sales for you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you got an initial win. आपने कुछ customers
Hmm.
के साथ काम करना शुरू कर दिया. They've started using a
Hmm.
product. Now you want to suddenly start creating a playbook of repeatability
Right.
in that sense. And that's where you need a professional to come on board, a
Hmm.
sales leader. And this is predominantly going to be a person who is a quota carrier sometime very
Hmm.
recently in their career,
Hmm.
because this person
Hmm.
has to do a lot of that hustle, while
Hmm.
at the same time it's winning at all costs sort of an
Okay.
attitude,
Hmm.
right? um, and someone who's actually in the recent past, at least once if not twice already, has
Hmm.
created the playbook of sales somewhere, very
Okay.
importantly. So in that entire charter of what are you looking for, you're looking for, have you created a sales playbook,
Hmm.
right? Because the whole
Right.
piece of trying to build sales function, which is a combination of process, people, and
Hmm.
execution that you would have, is the fact that ambiguity से process orientation करना थोड़ा सा मुश्किल होता है लोगों के लिए if you have not given that charter. So that
Right.
playbook is important, and then 10 to 100 largely is the space when this playbook gets into a process oriented repeatable format. First is you
Hmm.
create the playbook, get to 10. By the time the playbook,
Hmm.
and what I mean by the difference between these two stages for sales leader skill set or competency primarily is
Hmm.
the first guy, the 10 to 100, the 1 to 10 guy is the hustler.
Hmm.
Okay, that person
Right.
will have 2 3 reps, 5 reps depending on the
Right.
product. Okay, will actually be able to hustle with the reps but iterate very
Hmm.
quickly, take the product to market, work with the client very quickly, bring insights in, right? Someone who's
Hmm.
actually more oriented to making sure the product is getting used and you're building insights through facts and basis
Hmm.
insights, driving improvements in a very quick duration of time. right? That's the mentality of that leader. But beyond
Right.
that, you're saying the playbook has been created. Now I need to create a repeatable process orientation. You start trying to do that as a function. The sales teams become larger in that space. Hiring becomes a key aspect in the sales
Right.
leaders piece. Coaching becomes a very key aspect here. Again, that matter. Culture fit becomes a key aspect because now you've started creating a sales culture in the organization.
Right.
Uh, and then beyond the 100, it's about optimization largely, and that's a very different person or persona of a sales person or a sales leader or a sales function flowing, from top to bottom.
Got it. So a couple of related questions to this. When you are going out, you said that the person should have had the experience of, let's say, creating a playbook before, right? In your experience, like, I'm assuming that these are people who are coming from, let's say, non-tech industries. Does that happen a lot that you have to hire from outside tech, or are you able to get enough talent in India from within tech companies?
So yes and no, sort of.
Hmm.
Enterprise sales, you are is the if you'd asked me this question about 5-6 years back, I would have said no very
Hmm. Hmm.
confidently that the mark. I mean, eventually the entire startup ecosystem from talent has graduated from the traditional space of life itself.
Right. Right.
Having said that, I think we've gotten to the stage of the last decade of our startup ecosystem where today we can confidently go to similar companies or companies that have
Hmm.
actually grown over the last few years, in the last
Hmm.
5 years, 3 years as rocket ships, and find people with experience there. If
Hmm.
maybe not at the top, but at least people
Hmm.
who have gone through the journey, which is more important than playing the role itself.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah, I would say yes, today you can, but is that talent pool deep enough? I wouldn't say that with confidence still.
Hmm.
I mean, we would still go to
Right.
the traditional big B2B brands to look at teams there. But again,
Hmm.
I would say the nuance of that answer is for what stage. If I'm hiring
For
for
what
early
stage
stage,
are you
I
hiring?
will not hire someone literally or suggest someone to come from a
Hmm.
big company, right? Whereas if
Right.
I'm hiring for a later growth stage of a company in a
Hmm.
startup, as a startup, I would be open to looking at people from bigger companies, for that
Hmm.
matter.
Hmm. And are you saying that primarily because when people come from bigger companies, they are likely to not be culture fit, or they are not fit for, let's say, the processes, or I mean, just the general way of life in
So
a startup?
I don't want to generalize it, but this is just personally as insights that we've seen of building sales teams out. So the hustle is missing in that space.
Okay.
Right? I
Okay.
mean, just the fact that the what we've seen big company talent maybe miss out on is the fact that in those companies they come in where they have plethora of resources available to
Hmm.
them to make the thing work.
Hmm.
Whereas when you get to a startup, the biggest shock that they get is I don't have sales enablement. I don't have a sales, somebody making the deck for me. I don't know
Right.
who's making the pitch, blah, 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 marketing, product marketing, demand generation, all of that.
Hmm.
You have to get your hands dirty at that stage in a way which is very different when you're working in
Hmm.
those big firms that they come from, and hence the
Yeah.
fact that you bring those. So mostly my advice normally, Sobhi, is always, if you are even coming from a big firm, first
Hmm.
get into a startup that's actually a slightly more mature startup. Don't go to a
Okay.
absolutely early stage startup in your first gig right after
Right.
that,
Right. Right.
right? Because
Right.
most of the times your first gig in a startup is going to not turn out to be the way you think it will,
Yeah, I
right? and
agree.
and
And
that is when
witnessing.
you actually the insight of that gig is actually the most important learning phase of your career. While
Hmm.
the result orientation may have been different, but उससे अच्छी learning आपको कहीं नहीं मिलेगी.
कहीं नहीं मिल
And
सकते.
that learning
Agree.
is what you will use in your next role in a startup, which is when you should actually go earlier in stages,
Hmm.
use that opportunity, and hopefully you'll be more successful.
All right, fair point. If I come to the second part, the third part rather, where you spoke about no, actually, let me take a step back. A lot of founders, right? They message me over LinkedIn asking this question: is that where should we look for middle and senior level sales talent, right? And I think where they're coming from is that the job portals of the world are probably not cutting it for them, right? Because it's mostly active talent, not sort of top of the league talent that they're looking for. And the second issue that I have seen, if you're doing, let's say, outbound hiring, is that there is supreme discomfort in working with agencies.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like, what would you say to the founder if they have a question like this, that, where do I get my, let's say, 10 plus year sales talent whom I'm planning to make the national sales head or the regional sales head?
So, are we very relevant? And I don't think this is just relevant for sales, but this is, I would say,
Hmm.
relevant for every role when you are in a startup, as a startup founder,
Hmm.
putting your team
Hmm.
out. Your first few leaders that you hire have to be strong, high, literally talent magnets.
Hmm.
They're people
Talent
who actually
magnets.
would have followership,
Hmm.
right, at a time. And I'll give you an example. During your time, days of Zomato, if I was
Right.
to hire Sobi, the question I
Hmm.
would also ask is, Sobi, tell me who are the 10 people who will walk out with you, right?
Understood.
So
Yes.
I think the way to hire, when founders ask us this question, is always about, yes, whenever you go look for your this leader of the team and
Hmm.
whatever level you're looking at, try and
Hmm.
figure out how many people actually have followed this person in their previous organizations.
Hmm.
Okay, even if it is
Okay.
one or two. And it's a very big signal actually if you see people who have zero followers across, let's say, 10 years of WorkX,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? That's a signal to tell
Right.
you that people don't think of your leadership as something that I want to work under again, in a
Okay.
way.
And how do you find that out? Like, as a founder, if I were to try and like, what kind of detective work do I have to do to find that out?
So I mean, things very primary and secondary. Primary is we ask this question straight to people and said, tell me
Mm-hmm.
who are the people who followed you in the last 3, 4 organizations, or maybe it
Hmm.
help try and understand from them. A favorite question is, tell me who are the best performing folks in your team today,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
For examples, questions around how long do people take to get to quota full, optimization
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
achievement, right? And how many people don't get to it. So two
Hmm.
things that become extremely important in that space is, if when people following you, you would see a pattern of those people meeting those quotas and
Hmm.
actually growing in their careers, because everybody wants to
Okay.
grow in that ladder of,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
be a leader, and right, and I want to manage teams on my own. So a good sales leader, actually a good, beyond a certain time, is a coach, is a fantastic
Hmm.
coach. Basically, you're
Hmm.
enabling people around you to go achieve their targets, which in turn helps
Right.
you achieve yours. And one of the key aspects is how many, one of my favorite questions to sales leaders is, tell me over the last 2 stints how many people have grown out to become sales leaders themselves,
Hmm. As in mentored or coached by you?
but mentored and coached by you, right? People who would have at
Okay.
least done 2 years under you, 24 months,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And now are sales leaders in other roles, other positions,
Hmm.
other companies,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It'll also give you a clear indication if the person can talk about on fingertips 5 names and say, you know what, this guy's
Yes.
here, this guy's here, this guy's here. Right?
Yes.
So it gives
Yes.
you two things in that sense. One, direct indication that you are a coach who, you're a factory of creating fantastic sales guys, right?
Hmm.
Yourself.
Hmm.
Second,
Right.
you get names of 5 people you can as easily reach out to and say, boss, I heard your name, I heard you worked here, give me a ref. And refs is very important. Maybe we can talk about it a bit in this, but
Yes, yes,
yeah.
sure. Please, let's talk about refs first. I'll come to the other questions later.
So refs, Sobi, becomes extremely potent, I would say, as a I this is something that I've realized over the last 3 years of being in the startup
Hmm.
ecosystem. I think references are some of the most important, or ref hiring or ref checks,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Becomes one of the most important things in the hiring process of a sales leader,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
People that they have worked with, pure, people who worked in under their leadership and people they've reported to. There has to be a certain level of consistency in the communication that you hear in that space, right?
Got it.
We get, I tell this to every founder: if you're hearing a 10 on 10 ref, there is something wrong.
Okay. Yeah. That's too good to be true.
Nobody is perfect. There is just no
Yeah.
one who's perfect, and people should be able to give you areas of or blind sides or areas of improvement or things that what this person would naturally not gravitate to doing, right? And that consistency you will get in different kinds of people. So two things very, very important: sales leader hiring is make sure you do a 360-degree of talking to people around them and not just talk to one person in the firm in that space.
Right.
Make sure you do this, make sure you do that absolutely through a discreet ref. We discourage references where you go ask the sales leader themselves of people who we should be talking to in that space. So make that. So the way let me just take a step back. I would strongly suggest to founders always when we look at hiring is, once you've created a list of folks, for example, right, that I'm going to go reach out to, and you've done your first level of qualifying filters of those people, which your recruiter should be able to do in a way.
Yeah.
And the founder starts to invest more time in selling and then evaluating these sales leaders. I think very early upfront in the process, post just the first call, you should be able to do discrete high-level refs of the person. Say, okay, does the CV match what the person would have done otherwise and what people are saying? And you don't have to go very deep, but just high level to say, is this person good enough for me to be spending my time with them from here on? Right. And then when you get down to, and then you devise your evaluation process in a way, by the time you get to a conviction stage, right, then a couple of people would have come back to you mentioning these are areas that we would want to go deeper on, and those areas is exactly what you go do refs on.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah,
refs,
of course, it makes the conversation very pointed then.
Hanji, sorry, just completing that thought. General refs is something that we would is not insightful at all about a sales leader. So know what you're hiring for, know what you're evaluating for, and then know what the gaps are and take those gaps to your reference calls.
To your references. Makes sense. Totally makes sense. Yeah, that's a more pointed conversation. I mean, you're likely to get something out of it then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm guessing that means that, founders need to then be working with sort of outbound agencies to help them reach out to top talent in other firms. Sort of, I wouldn't use the word.
I wouldn't say so as much. For me, it's more about hiring and where do you get those people specifically. Those are channels, right? Whether it's an agency, it's a reference. The best way to hire is through references. It's never an agency. It's never a recruiter who's doing a cold conversation with a new candidate in the pipeline. It is always going to be through a reference, right? Someone in your ecosystem tells you someone in somewhere has done a great job as a sales leader. Those are the set of people you should be gravitating to, spending more time on, and in the first instance, right? Cold hiring will always take lesser of a priority in this space. So yeah, reference hiring is I would say, if you have that sort of a network that you can call 20 people around you or 10 people around you who you think are high caliber. I think references, the flip side of Sobi references is आप reference ले किससे रहे हो?
Correct.
And this has happened with us a lot of times. I am very happy to share this here. Is हमने कई बार जब sales leader hiring किया, I've come to you and said, Sobi, एक reference,
yes,
right? आपने किसके साथ काम किया है, right? That's how I would go talk to people. I wouldn't go LinkedIn searching 20 people. That's not the way I would go hire, and I would not even suggest that.
So clear message for people who don't have a strong network is to start building that network. Otherwise, then you would have to do the entire sort of whole 9 yards on LinkedIn and then go via agencies and all of that. Right?
I think one of the most important roles of a founder is to be a great hiring person, right? Leader. in that space.
Hmm.
And good hiring at early stages will only happen when you build great networks, when you surround
I
yourself with
agree.
quality people.
Hmm.
So
I
what you
agree.
said absolutely is bang on.
Right. So does that mean? But see, one of the concerns I have with founders interviewing sales leaders is the fact that they are too used to hiring tech talent, and now the same sort of benchmarks or parameters come, and they start gauging sales leadership with.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to do it, or do they have to make changes in their approach on how to, what kind of changes do they have to make if they have to interview sales leaders?
Very relevant. So, Sobi, what we have done, I can share our experience. And this is exactly what we face. What we
Hmm.
have done is we divide the things of what you're looking for or to evaluate in a sales leader. And as a
Hmm.
founder, if you've never done sales hiring upfront early and you're still trying to build that muscle, we would suggest that founder to start looking at having the evaluation conversation around culture fit, for example,
Okay.
the work ethic of the person. These are things that you will be able to really evaluate, because these are
Hmm.
things that you would do that for any other role as well.
Right.
But
Right.
sales piece of which I call as technical evaluation of sales has
Hmm.
to be done by an expert of sales.
Okay.
Okay. And
Okay.
what we do in this process, and we've hired
Hmm.
multiple sales leaders, is we
Hmm.
have the founder speak, and whoever is the key stakeholder here who
Hmm.
would work with the sales leader, they all speak. But before we get to a stage of whether this is the candidate or not,
Hmm.
let's take an example. We have 5 candidates we're talking to. By the end of the funnel, we'll get down to 2, right?
Hmm.
Which everybody's spoken to and says, these are 2 really good candidates who fit, who talk the way we want them to talk, who have the passion for the product, maybe have relevance for industry, and so on and so forth. Now, who's a better sales leader? Go put them, both of them, across in front of a sales leader already,
Hmm.
right? And get that sales. We call that as an expert round in
Okay.
our lingo, right?
Hmm.
And then get that sales leader, give the sales leader some context of what your business is, what is that you're trying to achieve in the next 2 to 3 years in this function, this stage, and the sales leader will come back to you with their inputs, the technical inputs of,
Hmm.
okay, whether this person is the right person from a functional perspective that you should be looking at. But a good way to learn and build that muscle is you shadow that interview as a founder,
Hmm.
right? You record those interviews, or you are part of those interviews where you are a listener, more
Hmm.
important. But without that, trying to become a sales leader evaluator
Hmm.
yourself is like saying, I'm trying to learn maths when I've never learned it from anyone, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I still need tutorials, right? I still need a teacher.
Yeah,
Still
yeah, yeah,
need
yeah.
someone to tell me what 2 plus 2 means.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I asked this question because I've noticed it firsthand. Founders, technical founders, struggling to conduct sales interviews because they're using the same parameters, right? Same kind of questions, etc. And I've personally found those to be fairly divergent. They don't overlap, more than 50%. The culture fit part and all is fine, but the technical part I've seen founders. So that's where it was coming from. Cool. I'll just take about another 10 minutes with you and a couple of questions. I won't hold you for too long tonight. My sort of second last question to you is about onboarding sales leadership talent. What kind of challenges have you seen in onboarding sales leaders? Have there been cases where it has not worked out, and in the successful cases where it has worked out, why has it worked out?
So far and few, I would say, but I think the cases where, from experience of not just in the last 3 years in the startup ecosystem, but previous to that as well. I mean,
Hmm.
from almost like 15 years of experience of hiring now. Um, so where it doesn't work out is it starts again early on in the process, where the expectation setting of what the role needs to do,
Hmm.
right, is one thing. Then you're evaluating the
Hmm.
person for something, and
Hmm.
then when the person comes on board, your expectation is diametrically opposite to that.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example of this.
Yeah.
When you start looking at hiring, the first thought is, I need to hire a sales leader. Okay.
Hmm.
And at that point in time, you need to sit down and think of why are you needing to hire, right? What are your
Hmm.
strengths, and
Hmm.
what will this role do?
Hmm.
Where is that overlap and where is the gap? Where do you gravitate to as a founder yourself
Hmm.
versus things that there is a gap of? And this sales leader should actually be someone who's filling those gaps for you, right?
Hmm.
Eventually, as the sales leader. Now, a couple of things where this person will come on board and actually not be successful is when you start overlapping and doing the same things that the sales leader will start and should be doing, for that
That
matter.
happens quite often, actually. Yeah.
So the reason you're hiring this person is because this is the expert, right?
Hmm.
It's like you are the CTO of the firm, but you still hire another CTO and you still overlap.
Correct.
So my
Correct.
suggestion always to founders is be very clear of whoever you bring on board, if whatever level that you're bringing in, they're experts to be doing that job. Your job is to make sure that you put the right resources around them to make them successful, not take the decisions for them, right? I
Yeah.
anecdotally kind of use this Sobi as an experience of saying I have my money but I'm not a trader, right? I start
Yeah.
investing, or rather I give it to a person who actually does this 24/7.
Right, right. It's like वही you give it to a portfolio management services firm say कि आप लगाओ stock market में मेरे behalf पे
हाँ,
पैसा.
exactly.
No, I kind of agree with you because what I've seen a lot of founders do is that in spite of getting a sales leader on board, they find it very hard to sort of let go managing the sales team on a day-to-day basis, right? I mean, you got to pull out a little and let the other person take, and there will be some problems, but eventually they'll fit in. Cool. The last question that I have, and then we'll just take a couple of questions, which have come in from viewers. It's generally sort of noticed that if you're coming from a fairly established industry and you're joining a startup in a leadership role, you will have to sacrifice on pay, on compensation in sales.
Hmm. Hmm.
How far is that true?
Um, there are ways of looking at it. Sobi, the short answer to that is it's not true.
Hmm.
Okay. However, um, for I will caveat that by saying when we suggest to founders about compensation structures for salespeople, it's not a 1 year structure. When
Okay,
you're coming to a startup, you need to think of at least 4 to 5 years of a commitment
agreed.
to,
Agreed.
right? And hence, the way when we go back and negotiate with sales leaders is to say, let's now sit down and decide what is the trajectory you've had over the last 3 4 years.
Hmm.
Let's extrapolate that trajectory to the next 5 years and see what is that you will make here.
Hmm.
And now I will give you a perspective if you come into this company with the wealth
Hmm.
creation opportunity, because it's not just the cash, it's the
Hmm.
entire
Yeah.
wealth creation opportunity. And you actually look at it proportionally with the risk,
Hmm.
because the risk is the stage of the company. If you're going to a company that's still MVP, then it's a different scenario, right? And hence your number of ESOPs are higher and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
But that's the way to look at it for any sales leader. Now, the long and short of that is, obviously, if you're a sales leader in an organization which is, say, doing about 50 million plus in India right now,
Hmm.
and you're coming into an organization where your job is to start looking at scaling this from a 5 million to the next 20 million
Hmm.
sort of a
Hmm.
function, you will get compensated well around in the long term on the equity piece of it, right?
Hmm.
But yet there may be a sacrifice that you may have in the initial years,
Hmm.
right? Of, let's say, the first year compensation of cash that you're making, but that also is not dramatically very different from what you're making.
Okay.
But it's like saying today cash is important to the firm. Maybe the
Hmm.
second year onwards, I would go back to my original cash comp, right? Now that 1 year gives you the time to know whether this is the right place for me to be, and the founder to actually also know whether you are the right person who's working out. It takes, generally I've seen people say varied things. I would say it takes you about 6 months to know whether it's working for you as a sales leader or
Hmm.
not.
Hmm. Yeah, agree. 6 months is pretty much about the time.
It's about the time,
But
and
yeah,
if
that's
it's not working, then it's not working.
It's not working. I think you get to know pretty early if it's going to work out or not. I mean, it hardly stretches beyond a few months' time. Cool. Okay, I'll come to one question from our viewers. It's so Vinod is asking, what are the views on the product market fit in startup to that in FMCG? I think what he's trying to ask is that, if I'm a startup and I'm trying to hire from the FMCG field, from the FMCG sector, and I know where this is coming from because FMCG telecom, right, tend to be the largest talent pools nowadays. There are so many senior leadership talent there who are sitting on the edge thinking कि अब हम startup में जाएंगे, right? And here is probably somebody from the ecosystem asking, should we take them or not, right? And what kind of challenges are they likely to face when they reach out? Do you have any views on that?
So we've hired a lot of people from these sectors, Sobi, that you just mentioned. Then again, the advice to founders is these are people you bring in at a growth stage of a firm, more importantly. These may not be the right people. I mean, if they haven't had any startup exposure, which is the playbook creation exposure, the difference. And what I think Vinod would benefit from is the fact that Vinod, FMCG, the product market fit on sales happened a long time back. It didn't happen in India, right? So sales होती कैसे FMCG में, ये बहुत पहले हो गया था. अब सिर्फ नाम चेंज होते हैं वहां पे. And people come in to take it to the next level, which is more optimization of sales engines, whether it is telecom or sales or FMCG and others related sectors. So what are you really getting from those people is the ability to scale things fast, right? And hence, where are the right fit? The answer lies there. They're great scalers, and scalers you get when you are in growth stage, right? Whereas the same FMCG person, if has done a startup stint where the person has created a playbook out of nothing, right? And you are the second startup that this person is joining, that's a fantastic hire to make.
Absolutely. I think I'm with you on this one. One thing that I have noticed is that people who are from FMCG and telecom backgrounds tend to be great at sort of making getting a sales team to run on its feet. Like they're always on the run because they have learned that, right? It's just very ingrained in them. But the playbook creation part, like you said, I have to create sort of narratives, pitch decks from scratch. That happened very long ago in their sort of company's life cycle, right? So not a great idea to do that. Cool. Great. I think that's pretty much it. I think I will not take more time. Already taken about close to 40 minutes with you. My promise to you was 45 minutes. So I just want a very, a closing note from you, Siddharth, about what would you say to founders currently who are struggling to make, sales hires in their leadership team, be it middle or senior level leadership, on what are like the top 3 to 4 things that they have to keep in mind, and which could probably help them save their time, right? Wisdom that you've gathered over a period of your career.
So a couple of things. One, I would strongly suggest go benchmark first before starting to talk to sales leaders. If you need to first hire, if you never hired sales leaders, which means if I'm a founder, I would go find a Sobi and say, Sobi, I need to hire a sales leader. You've done the role. And I know you're a great sales leader from the work that you may have done. I want to come and talk to you about what should I be looking for. Get your evaluation right. Right? What should you be talking to a sales leader about? What you mentioned sometime earlier, right? Is आपका technical evaluation है क्या? Right? And then maybe I'll even suggest, Sobi, can you come in as an expert once I find the people that I like, right? Can you revalidate what I'm looking for in that space? So that's the first piece. Get your evaluation right. Be very sure of why are you hiring this person. When you bring this person on board, make sure that you keep reminding yourself the fact that this is the person you've trusted. Once you've hired a person, you've trusted the person for what they've done. They've gone through your evaluation cycle. Now give them that opportunity to go action it for you, right? You have to give them the space to make their decisions. However, as we discussed, it just takes a few months. Don't drag your feet. If it's not working, it's not working. You need to let the people know, right? What people generally found for founders and especially early stage companies, the most important thing is time. You have your
Hmm.
competition, which is stacked with capital at that point in time and taking their product to market. And you
Yeah.
as a founder cannot lose time in this
Hmm.
space. So one is the wrong hire, which you will never get desperate about hiring someone in
Hmm.
that space. Make sure you're actioning things, but
Hmm.
you get to the right person. I would take 20 more days to find the right person than say, oh, I'm getting frustrated and I'll hire the wrong person for the role
Hmm.
in that
Oh yeah.
space,
Yeah.
right? Very, very importantly, I will make sure I do my ref checks extremely deep about the person.
Hmm.
I will not go by hearsay. As a founder, I want to be on those ref check calls. I will not outsource it to someone. I will not
Ah.
go to an agency and say, please do the ref and come back and let me know what you
Hmm.
hear. Right.
Hmm.
So as a founder, I want to be on that ref call because this is the most important person for me or the role for me right now in this company
Yeah.
from stage whatever C to A to B at that point in
Correct.
time. And then if things don't work out, I'll take quick calls. I think that's something that is very, very important. We spoke less of it, but I would want to talk about this very quickly is to say
Yeah.
just as sales leaders, you need to make sure if I have quota carrying people and I'm the leader, I need to make sure if some people are dragging their feet, I take a quick call. Can I let them go? Do I have that
Hmm.
ability to take that quick call? Similarly, as a
Hmm.
founder, you need to start taking quick calls on sales leaders as well or people in
Hmm.
that team because time is money at the end of the day for you.
That's right. Of course, in a startup, I mean, like you said, this, I mean, you're always on a short leash there, right? Great, awesome. This was very useful. Thank you, Siddharth, for sharing this. I mean, I know a lot of people talk to, let's say, partners themselves in companies, but for a change, I like to speak to people who have been there, done that in terms of execution, because sales is all about execution. So वो insights लेना वो बहुत जरूरी होता है, and absolutely, straight up without mincing words. Yeah.
I'm
So
very
in
glad
that
for
sense,
whatever my experience can help your viewers in this space. Would be very, very delighted about that. And really nice to be here. Thank you so much for doing this.
my pleasure. I'm going to end the broadcast, but stay online.